Okay, let's get started. So thank you everyone for joining me tonight. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Jeannette Painovich. I have been practicing Chinese medicine for about 23 years now, which means when someone comes to see me, I treat them with acupuncture and Chinese herbs primarily to ail whatever may be, their issue. So about 7 or 8 years ago, though, I took a deep dive into nutrition. And the deeper I dove, the more I realized that nutrition is so important because that is what feeds our gut bacteria. And now the latest research really is showing us that as our gut bacteria goes, so goes our health. And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is basically how do we make sure that the bacteria in our body are as healthy as can be. All right. So the title of this is How to Get Good Poop. And what does a healthy gut microbiome look like and how probiotics may help? Okay. Now, this talk really isn't about poop. All right. It's about what's found in your poop. So the majority of our gut bacteria is found in our large intestine or our colon, which is where our poop is made. So if you want to know about the condition of your gut microbiome, basically you do a stool analysis, which will tell you about the health of that microbiome. So in the end, it is very beneficial to have good poop because it means you have lots of good, healthy bacteria, but our poop talk ends here. All right. So what I want you to do is meet your oldest ancestor. So prokaryotes are a single-celled organism that are the earliest and most primitive form of life on Earth. We have evolved from bacteria. And so today, people and these microbes, we all live together in a symbiotic relationship, and the healthier that relationship is, the healthier we are. So what are these bacteria or these microbes? What are they? What do they do? So these microbes, also known as microorganisms, are living creatures that can only be seen under a microscope. Some have just one cell, some are multicellular, so they come in a lot of different shapes and forms. Their size means that individually, these microbes have basically no impact on us. But when these vast populations of microbes act together, they are capable of profound effects on our health. And that's what hopefully you will get out of this talk tonight. And let's talk about the number of microbes we have in our body. So our gut is made up of approximately 100 trillion microbes. That's a lot of bacteria. These bacteria, right, they actually outnumber the cells in our body by 10 to 1. So the cells in our body make up who we are. And even those are outnumbered 10 to 1 by the bacteria that we house within this cellular body we have. And genetically speaking, your gut microbiome outnumber your genetics 150 to 1. So I can't tell you how many people come into my office and say, well, I've got this condition because, I'm genetically predisposed. My mom had it, my dad had it, my sister has it. Actually, that's not true. Your genetics only make up about 10% of your health, right? Think about that. Only 10% of kind of what you manifest from a health perspective is made up by your genes. That means that you have power and control over 90% of your health. 90%. And tonight we're going to talk about how we do that and how we get these gut microbiomes so healthy that we can basically tell our genes to hit the road. So what does the microbiome do? Well, one of its biggest jobs is to break down food. They also manufacture lots of healthy vitamins, and they produce something called short chain fatty acids, which we're not going to get into talking specifically about those. But trust me when I say those are very important in our overall health. So the more we can produce those, the better off we are. The other thing that our gut bacteria do is they remove toxins out of our body, right? Which in today's world is very important. Our gut microbiome controls 70 to 80% of our immune system. So if you are someone who has any type of autoimmune issue, you need to focus on your gut because that's where 70, 80% of your health is coming from. And I want you to keep in mind that our gut produces 90% of our serotonin, right? So that means serotonin's our feel-good neurochemical. So when our gut's healthy, so is our mind and our emotional and mental well-being, very much controlled by our gut. So let's talk about a little bit of the battle that we face today, just as humans. right? We are living in a time where our bodies are challenged by more environmental factors than ever before in human history. Antibiotics and other medications, the food and environmental toxins, these highly processed foods, our stress levels, and basically our overall Western way of life has contributed to a significant loss in the diversity, right? So the amount of different bacteria we have, which is very important. It has impacted our stability of our gut bacteria, the adaptability and the resilience of our gut microbiome. Right, so technology and industrialization has done lots to help us, but it also has done lots to hurt our gut bacteria. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what this colon and this large intestine looks like, so you have a good idea of what we're talking about. So this is a cross section of our large intestine. So this outer layer, this thick outer layer here, is basically the musculature that causes the peristalsis, or the movement of our food and our, feces and all that stuff to move through the body and out of our system. So this outer part is the musculature, very vascular area. Again, that's what causes everything to move through the intestines. This layer right here is a single cell, a single line of cells that basically are in control of trying to keep out the bad guys and let the good guys actually seep through their cells and get into our blood system and our body to do the good that they're meant to do. The gut bacteria actually lie on the surface of the cellular wall, and this is where they do all of their good. All right. So what does a healthy gut or healthy gut microbiome look like? So on a blown up view, this is that cellular lining that I was talking about. We have only one single cell that separates our inside of our gut into the rest of our body. All right. So these cells are supposed to be nice and tight and only let through the good guys that are going to help us out. Right. And then on top of that one cell lining is a mucosal layer. This is kind of like a sticky, kind of mucousy area that is meant to protect our gut lining from all of the toxins that come through our intestines and our body on a daily basis. All right. So this is supposed to be nice and clear and not let any of the bad guys in. On top of, so that's the mucin 2. This mucin 1 layer is basically where all of our gut bacteria are on patrol. Okay. So they're supposed to be out here doing what they do, looking for toxins, producing our vitamins and all that stuff, but they're not supposed to be in here. They're supposed to do their job, and then they let the good guys come through this mucosal layer and then go into our body, our blood system through this single cell line. So that's what a healthy gut looks like. On the other hand, what happens, right, when we have an unhealthy digestive system, or what's now called leaky gut, what happens is this mucin 2 layer that's supposed to be pretty pristine actually starts to weaken because all of the toxins that are in our system start to break that lining down. And then you notice that all the toxins and things that are supposed to be taken out of our body are now penetrating into this cell lining. They start to make it weak, and things start to be able to leak, right? When you talk about leaky gut, it means that these toxins are actually leaking through the cell lining, and they're not supposed to do that. All right, so this is what an unhealthy gut lining looks like. So these toxins can both go through in between the cells and can even get through the cell itself when things are really bad. So when that happens, and the way that we know that we have leaky gut is we look for something called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS for short. So when certain type of bacteria die, right, these 100 trillions of bacteria that we have, when certain types die, they release a component that are toxic to us, and those are those LPS, so those lipopolysaccharides. Now, these LPS are natural components of bacteria, and so we expect to have some of it, in our body, in our bloodstream, right? So a certain level is normal, and as long as the gut is healthy, we can handle that just fine. The problem is when our gut bacteria is not healthy or imbalanced, these LPS leak into our bloodstream and cause what's called endotoxemia. All right. And they now have testing where they can see if we have high levels of LPS, that means our gut microbiome is not healthy and they're letting too many toxins into our body. So endotoxemia is basically simple medical jargon for toxins in our blood, which, I mean, in and of itself, that doesn't sound good, right? We do not want toxins in our blood. We want healthy components in our blood. So when we have gut dysbiosis or these LPS are too high, what does that look like? Well, I'm going to give you a second to look at this list of conditions that are associated with gut dysbiosis, which basically is all of our health issues, right? There is all of our gut issues. Our mental and emotional well-being can be caused by leaky gut. A lot of our neurodegenerative diseases, right, are associated with leaky gut. Diabetes, our fatigue levels, our pain levels, right? We already talked about autoimmune disorders. So look at all of these things that are caused by a bad gut microbiome. And remember when I said earlier, our health goes is our gut microbiome health goes. And you can see why, because it can lead to so many health issues. So how do we create this healthy gut microbiome? Well, 3 ways, basically: by the foods we eat, by not eating and allowing our gut bacteria to actually breathe a little bit, and probiotics that can basically help keep that gut lining healthy. So what kind of foods? And again, I don't have time to go into a deep dive, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the foods that actually really help our gut bacteria. So you want organic whole foods. Whole foods means if it comes from Mother Nature, it's usually pretty good for us, right? So those foods that we, grow, produce, that type of thing, and then eat in their natural form. Which are basically our fruits and vegetables, those types of things. If we are to eat meat, and I am fine with meat. A lot of people are like, oh, stay away from meat. I don't think that's true. But if you do eat meat and you want to eat meat, you need to make sure that it also comes from its natural source, meaning cows, pigs, so things like red meats are supposed to eat grass. Okay, so if you're eating meat that is being grain fed, it's basically not healthy for you because it's not healthy for you. So if you're going to eat red meat, you want to make sure that it's grass fed and is roaming around free. Likewise with the chickens, we want to make sure that they're pasture raised, meaning that they are out and pecking the ground and eating the things that make them healthy. So those are the things you want to look for from a meat standpoint: grass fed and pasture raised. If you're eating fish, you want to make sure that it's wild caught and not farm raised, right? Again, where it normally belongs in nature, if it comes from there, it's usually pretty good for you to eat. Fermented foods are really good. Your sauerkraut, your pickles, your kimchi, things like that, just because in the fermentation process, that process and the things that happen are very good for our gut bacteria when we eat those. And we want to eat lots of fiber. Fiber is basically what feeds our gut bacteria. So we want to make sure we get lots of fiber in our diet. So the current recommendations for our daily fiber intake is around 30 to 35 grams for males and 25 to 30 grams for females. That doesn't sound like a lot, but the problem is most of us only eat about 50% of the daily recommended amount of fiber. So we're really not doing a good job of eating those foods that provide good sources of fiber. What do those foods look like? And again, this is just a small list. I encourage all of you to go online and look up, high fiber foods, that type of thing. So some of the foods are your oats and your lentils, your peas and beans and that type of thing, different fruits. Nuts are great. Again, your vegetables are good. Avocados are a great source of fiber. They're also a great source of healthy fat. I'm a huge avocado fan. And potatoes offer fiber as well. The interesting thing is that they actually are better and higher in fiber if you cook them and let them cool and then eat them after they've cooled. Like I roast a lot of vegetables during the week, and so I put them in the refrigerator. So when I pull them back out and eat them, they're actually healthier for me because they've sat and cooled down. Things that you absolutely do not want to feed your gut are sugar. I always joke that sugar is the devil. It really is the worst thing that we can do. And sugar is what feeds our bad gut bacteria, right? Those unhealthy gut bacteria that we don't want in. Sugar is their party food. So stay away from sugar. Dairy, most people are sensitive to dairy because dairy that's produced in the United States has a protein mutation. And most of us are sensitive to that mutation. And so for that reason, you want to stay away from dairy. You know, if you're eating dairy from sheep or goat, that doesn't have that mutation. So that's usually easier on the system. Or if you're eating cheese that's produced outside of the United States, that usually doesn't have that mutation either. So some dairy is okay. Just the dairy that's produced here in the United States is usually not good for us. Gluten. Even if you don't think you're sensitive to gluten, I guarantee you are. Again, just in the way that the wheat and the gluten's processed here, we all tend to be sensitive. Sometimes, I mean, not for some people, not that much, and for other people, very sensitive to gluten. Any food that's processed. Again, we talked about eating whole foods, right? Eating them in the form that they come to us naturally. So if you're finding it in a box, it's probably not the healthiest thing for you to do. So stay away from the processed foods. And then diet drinks, right? They are one of the worst things you can do for your gut bacteria. So really stay away from anything that says diet on it. So I also mentioned one thing to do that's really good for our gut bacteria is not eating. Like I said, no food. So basically that means intermittent fasting. So I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting. Why? Well, I want you to just talk about this logically. Let's look at this logically. So our bodies were never programmed to eat all day long, right? And now we have food available 24/7, right? But if you think about how we evolved, which was we had to usually go hunt for our food, go gather our food. And so you're out most of the day, and then you'd come back and you'd cook and you'd eat. And then you'd wake up and you do that process all over again. So our gut bacteria, right, as we evolved, they were used to having lots of downtime, lots of time to regenerate, to rest, just to get a break from all that food. And so up until a few hundred years ago, they didn't have to adapt to all this food that we eat, okay? So they actually like to have some time to rest and relax and not have to be working all the time. The other thing to keep in mind is food is one of the most toxic substances we put into our body. It can be very nutritious and a great resource for us, but can also be very toxic, again, if we're eating those foods that aren't good for us. So if we're constantly inundating our body with the things that aren't healthy, processed foods, sugars, those types of things, it really wipes out our gut bacteria. Fasting, like I said, really gives our gut bacteria time that is otherwise used during this continual digestion to do its job and do it well. So give your gut bacteria a break for a little while so that it can come back strong and ready to do the job, you know, the next time that food comes into the system. So there are no hard and fast fasting rules. You need to see what works for you. I can tell you that typically you need at least 12 to 13 hours of a fasting period, right? If you think about the word breakfast, it's breaking your fast. So if you can, you know, say you stop eating dinner at 7, if you don't eat until 8 or 9 the next morning, you're pretty golden. And there are ways to still have coffee, tea, that type of thing, and not break a fast. So you can have liquids, you just can't put anything in that liquid. If you go to my website and look up, I have a whole talk on intermittent fasting. It'll go over all the things that you can actually eat or drink while you're fasting. But you basically need to find out what works for you. For some people, they like to do a 14-hour or 16-hour fast every day. And again, everyone's different. Find out what works for you, but really think about giving your gut bacteria good at least 12 or 13 hours of rest between, you know, dinner and breakfast the next day. Or you can go from lunch to breakfast, whatever you want to get that break in is fine. Find out what works for you, but do it because it is so healthy for your gut bacteria. All right, so let's talk about probiotics because I know this is such a confusing topic for most people. So basically, probiotics are basically bacteria in a pill. So when you take a probiotic, you're swallowing a whole bunch of bacteria and hoping that it goes in and helps out that gut bacteria, right, that you have. So you're supplementing what you have already with this pill that you're taking in, right? So they are actually live microorganisms, right? And when we take them, they're intended to have health benefits for us. But this is the thing that I really want to push today, is that not all probiotics are created equal. So really, the latest research has found that most probiotic products on the market have really focused on adding more strains and higher cell count to help boost their marketing message. But there's no scientific evidence that having dozens or all these strains of this or these high cell counts do any good for us, all right? What they found is actually far more effective to have just a few bacteria in the probiotic pill. They say 2 to 4 verified, tested, high quality strains. That's better than having a random mix of all these 15 or 20 different strains. You want to stay away from that. They've also found that a lot of these probiotics are mislabeled. So what they say and that's in there isn't in there, or they find that things that they aren't labeling are actually in these probiotics. So basically what they found, which is sad, is that really only 10% of the products on the market actually work. 10%. So many people are actually wasting their money. All right. And so I want to talk to you about what to look for in a probiotic so that you're taking the high quality and you're not wasting your money. So what does make a good probiotic? Well, a few things. Probiotic has to have what's called a biphasic life cycle. Basically, that means it has to be living outside of your body and inside of your body. All right. So it's got to be able to survive in both environments. Once you take that probiotic pill in, it's basically got to survive through a very hostile gastric system, right? When we eat our food, it goes into our stomach, it gets churned up, tossed around, tons of acid added, very high temperatures. So that probiotic has to be able to, first of all, make it through your gut. And so many of them just get burned up and wasted right then and there. They never make it past that. Then once they get past the gastric system, they actually have to then live long enough to make it through your small intestine and get down into that large intestine where it actually starts to do its work. All right. So the other thing that they have to do is if they make it all the way down to the large intestine, they actually have to have an impact on your microbiome, which means that they might get down there, but the wrong strains are getting released and they basically don't do any good for you. So again, lots of factors make a good quality probiotic. And what they found is that the only type of bacterial strain to meet all of these criteria are something called bacterial spores. So if you're taking a probiotic that's not in a spore form, chances are it's not doing you a lot of good. So what does a spore form bacteria mean? Well, these are bacteria that are found out in the environment and they have an endospore. They have an endospore covering, meaning that they've covered themselves with a thick protein calcified coat that really makes them it makes them able to survive in lots of different environments. In fact, these bacterial spores can exist in this dormant protected state indefinitely. I think research, the oldest living spore form bacteria found is like 250 million years old. So when I say they can survive a long time, they can survive a long time, right? So again, this coating makes them impervious to all of the things on the outside, the UV radiation, the desiccation, or the, I'm blanking, when things get dried out, right? They don't get dried out, they can survive lots of acids, those types of things. So that's what makes them, that spore, so helpful, right? And then the spores also allow that bacteria to pass through, again, our acidic gastric system and all the way into the large intestine where that can then come out of its spore state and start to do its job. So I'm going to tell you what company I like to use. That doesn't mean that you have to go use it. I'm going to tell you why I like it. So I use products from a company called Microbiome Labs. My favorite product is their Mega Sporebiotic, right? So it's a spore-based probiotic. It has 5 keystone strains, meaning that when you talk about a keystone strain, these are the bacteria that then go into your gut and can help with producing lots of diversity. Remember, we talked about that is starting to get impacted because of the toxic world we live in. So they're very good about promoting diversity and enhancing our beneficial bacteria, right? So these are the main strains that are going to make all these other subpopulations work really, really well. And the thing I love about it is it's research backed. I'm going to talk about one research paper that's been published, but they have several published papers, and you can go on their website, microbiomelabs.com, and look at all the different research they've done. And to me, that means a lot. So if you're taking a probiotic that doesn't have research backing, it's probably because it doesn't work and they have no way of proving, what they're telling you. So this particular was one of the first researches that they did. And what they found with this is that they had people eat the same high-fat meal every night for 30 days. So all of the subjects ate the same high-fatty meal for 30 days. Half of them they gave the probiotic to, and half they didn't. At the end of this 30 days, they then took it. So they took blood work from before, they took blood work after this 30-day intervention. And what they found is the people who did not take the probiotic, remember when we talked about those endotoxins, right? That LPS and those endotoxins that we don't want in our system. What they found at the end of 32 days is that the people that took the placebo pill, they had over a 30% increase in the amount of endotoxins in their system, which is not good. On the other hand, the people who took the spore treatment within 30 days, they had a 45% reduction in the amount of endotoxins found in their blood. 45%, that's pretty significant, and that's only after 30 days. So basically, there was an overall 60% difference in these groups between the ones who didn't take the probiotic and ones that did. So again, the first great research project that they published that I just love. So now let's go back to all the things that were caused when we had those endotoxins, right, in our bloodstream. So if these probiotics actually reduce the amount of endotoxins and LPS found in our system, then that is going to play a big part in reversing all of the health conditions that we get when we have too high of the endotoxins in our blood, right? So if you have a healthy gut microbiome, this is what can happen. We can reduce all those things that so many people suffer from. Again, all of our digestive issues can get better. Our mental and emotional health can get so much better, because if you remember, I talked about 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. But if you don't have a healthy gut, you can't produce the neurochemicals that make you feel good. All right. So healthy gut, healthy body, healthy mind, it actually then will reduce all of these chronic neurochemical issues that we can have. Can reduce cancers, it can reduce heart disease, diabetes, all of the things that we don't want to suffer from. Having a healthy gut actually will help all of these things, both immediately and again in the future. All right. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about are prebiotics, because a lot of people are, again, confused. Well, what's a probiotic? What's a prebiotic? So prebiotics basically are the foods that feed our gut bacteria, right? We talked about what we can do from a food source when we eat that helps our gut bacteria grow. And we talked a lot about fiber. And so prebiotics are usually made up of fiber for the most part that can feed our gut bacteria. But general prebiotics, unfortunately, can feed both good and bad bacteria equally. So we want to make sure we're only feeding the good bacteria. This particular precision prebiotic does just that. It's made up of clinically tested, the non-digestible fibers that can increase our gut, again, the diversity within our microbiome, and again, feed those keystone flora, the ones that actually then help everything else grow better. So these are precision prebiotics. And again, right, they only feed the good bacteria. And more specifically, if you can remember back when I first started talking, these bacteria that they're feeding produce those short chain fatty acids that are so important for our overall health. So that's again why I love this specific type of prebiotic product from Microbiome Labs. The last thing I'm going to talk about is a product called MEGAMucosa. This is a particular formula that has key amino acids, immunoglobulins, and flavonoids in there to support that that single cell lining that I talked about that is so important in keeping the bad guys out, letting the good guys in. This particular product really helps solidify that barrier between, our gut, the toxins that we ingest, and our blood system. Microbiome Labs has this great protocol called Total Gut Restoration that I really like people to take. So it's the Mega Sporebiotic, the MEGAPRE, and the MEGAMucosa is taken over a 3-month period to really enhance all those things that we talked about, right? So the first part of it, the probiotic that you take, is going to give you all of these good guys that we want in there to fight the battle for us. So you take those bacteria in, and then you take the mega prebiotic, right, which then feeds the good guys, and only the good guys, those good guys that are going to increase the diversity and increase that beneficial bacteria. Then the last thing that you do is you take the MEGAMucosa, again, to make sure that we keep this lining nice and tight and this barrier functioning, so it keeps the bad guys out and the good guy and lets the good guys in. So this is what it looks like. And another reason that I like this product is because they basically say you don't have to take a probiotic every day, which you'll find very few companies that say that, right? Because they want you to take their product all the time so you spend more money. But basically, with this particular protocol, you go through this total gut restoration protocol. Again, it's a 3-month program. On month 1, you slowly are going to increase the amount of probiotic you're taking, because when you put in good bacteria, it also excludes or kind of kills the bad bacteria. If you do that too quickly, you're going to get symptoms, bloating, gas, things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. So you start very, very slowly and increase over time. Then when you've gotten that in for a month, then month 2, again, you slowly are going to increase the amount of prebiotic that you give, right? So we're going to give the prebiotic in order to feed the probiotics. You do that for month 2, and then month 3, you take in that MEGAMucosa then again to solidify that one cell lining. Once you've done that, right, you have laid down a great foundation. So basically, you only have to fertilize, that soil 2 or 3 times a week. You don't have to take these on a daily basis. If, and that's an if, you're trying to eat healthfully and really feeding those gut bacteria, your good sources of fibers and your whole foods and organic, all that. So if you're doing that, you can just take now the pre and the pro 2 to 3 times a week and you're good to go. Then it's suggested every 3 to 6 months, if you want to just, again, boost that single cell lining, you can take another round of the MEGAMucosa. So that's what that looks like. And the products that I recommend to people, this is kind of what I talk to them about. The other thing that I like about this product is because not only is it health enhancing, but for me, it's diagnostic. So if people go out and they are taking the probiotics or the prebiotic and they come back and they say, hey, you know what? I'm really uncomfortable doing this. What that tells me is that they have bigger issues that we need to deal with first. It means that their leaky gut's pretty darn bad, or they can have something called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which means that the bacteria, there's a small amount of bacteria in our small intestine, but there shouldn't be a large amount. And if we have too much bacteria that's overgrown in our small intestine, it can cause lots of uncomfortable things such as bloated and distended stomach, constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain, excess gas. So if people come back and tell me, I'm taking these and it's actually getting worse, I know that we're feeding the bacteria that's in the small intestine, and we don't want bacteria in there. So what we want to do is we want to take a step back, maybe take a couple different supplements that will, help reduce the small intestine or SIBO, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or products that will help reduce the leaky gut first. And then once we've mended that problem, then we go back and start the whole total gut restoration protocol. So again, I love it because it also tells me, hey, there are problems even deeper than we thought there were. So in conclusion, all right, I just want to reiterate that today we are living in a time where our bodies are challenged by more environmental factors than ever before in human history. Toxins that never existed before, the medications that we take, all the energy disruptions from all of our cell phones and the Wi-Fi, all that, right? This, along with the massive shift that we've had in our social dynamics, right? The stress, all of this has changed so rapidly that it's really no surprise that it has impacted our body's health, our gut microbiome negatively, right? So we need to make sure that we can do everything we can to fight off all the things that we are inundated with. And again, research now, again, in the last 10 years is finding the most effective form of combating this war is through supporting our gut and our gut microbiome, right? Because it is a powerful modulator of inflammation, of our immunity, of our energy, of our hormone, of the nutrition that we can absorb, and the neurotransmitters, right? The things that make us feel good. It has a huge impact on all of these things. So the bottom line is, give your gut a fighting chance, right? Giving your gut a fighting chance is the single most important thing you can do for your health today. So again, thanks for coming. I hope you've learned a few things. You can always reach out to me if you have any questions. You can go to my website at drpainovich.com and you can contact me through there if you have any questions. All right. Thanks for joining. Take care.